I have my notes in hand, so I'll give you the thumbs up. As I grew up and became an adult, there was a story that was somehow handed to me by society. It's a story about how life works and how work works. And it says there's a lot of paths you could take, and you gotta pick one. So get with the program. And then as you go down your chosen path, your job is to achieve. Yeah, you try to achieve, and you get good at what you do, and people will notice that, and then you'll get some reward. And by the way, it's difficult to change paths in the middle of the walk. So now, if someone says, "Tell me about yourself," your answer is about your chosen path, as though that choice says everything that you need, as though your accomplishments tell everything that someone should need to know about you. Well, for 15 years, I was a software systems guy, and I was pretty successful, and I had ship software, I had magazine columns, all that kind of stuff, and I was so enthusiastic about it that my sister would say, "That's my computer brother." But the last few years of that part of my life, I started to get uncomfortable. I started to get kind of unsatisfied. And eventually I realized the reason, because I cared more about people than machines, but my job had to do mostly with machines. So I was caring less and less about my job. And so I chose a different path. I became a designer. And it took a few years to make that change, but I had good mentors, and I had a whole body of literature to learn from, and I had, people to look up to. And so for 15 years, I was a successful design guy, and I achieved a lot. But 4 years ago, I drew this picture in my notebook. And I drew it, and I looked at it, and I felt this shock of recognition. The path is ended. The path I chose is ended, and it's at the shore of a broad sea. And on the other side, there's this wonderful country, and I could go there if I would just get in that boat. But I could get in that boat if only I would let go of the branch, which is my last hold on the old country. That's the country where I know how to succeed, and where I'm known. I've worked so long there, and I know how to succeed there. And the idea of letting go of that branch is scary. So during that time, I started to read the works of lots of poets. So for example, Rilke's The Swan compares our labors to the swan awkwardly walking on the ground, and then says, as he eases himself into his own element, he's just calmly carried by the current. And quite a few poets speak about the brokenness of this, or the inadequacy of that many paths view of life. So here's more from Machado. "Traveler, your footprints are the path, and nothing more. There is no path, only trails across the sea." And I've certainly been taken to school by David White. He points out that periodic reinvention is a characteristic of anything or anyone that lives long enough. And that we do that through conversations, especially the conversations we're afraid to have, the courageous conversations. Well, after many months of such ponderings, I drew another sketch. So I'm in the boat. And I hadn't chosen a new path, but I had let go of my old story. And there in the boat, I had to get used to just being myself, not a designer or not a software guy or whatever, just being myself. And I had to get comfortable with not knowing where I was going. I was replacing decision-making with a feeling about what draws me on. What draws the swan to the water? He loves to be in the water. So for the last 2 years or so, it's felt like I'm actually on the shore of my new work. I don't really know its name. I'm still learning to explain it. And it's taken a while to find people to talk to about it. But it's okay, because I love finding this thing, this kind of my equivalent of the water to the swan. And instead of designing things or systems, we're designing situations where groups of people can create for themselves. So for me, this limiting story of life has been replaced by, I see a never-ending series of frontiers stretching out in front of each of us. And each involves a crossing. Some of them are brought to us by the world, some we create ourselves, and each involves a crossing into this from familiar to unfamiliar. And here's David White. The road seen, then not seen. The hillside hiding, then revealing the way you should take. The road dropping away from you as if to leave you walking on thin air, then catching you, holding you up, and the way forward, always in the end, the way that you followed. The way that carried you into your future, that brought you to this place. No matter that it sometimes took your promise from you. No matter that it had to break your heart along the way. The sense of having walked from far inside yourself for something that seemed to stand both inside you and far beyond you, that called you back to the only road in the end that you could follow. Every step along the way, you carried the heart and the mind and the promise that first set you off and drew you on, and you were more marvelous in your simple wish to find a way than the gilded roofs of any destination you could reach. David White. So, I'm 57 years old, and I'm not on any particular path at all. I have a hard time answering the question, what do you do? But I've never felt more excited about possibility, and I've never had more of a sense of home. And that's the little story I wanted to tell. Thank you.